Welcome, everyone, to Squid and the Ultimate Elite Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Elite fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid 5. Squid, how's it going?
It's all good now. I got here. It took me a long time to get here, but nonetheless, I got here and it was fine. We're ready to get going here, and I'm looking forward to it. The beard and the mustache are coming in pretty good, although they're at the worst stage where they're really itchy right now.
Well, the pledges, as long as the pledges keep coming in, that's good. Make it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So go to Rick Vive on Instagram. There's a link there. He is raising money. He wants to raise $2,200 for Movember. Donate generously, folks, and generate often.
Yeah. And, I mean, the whole object of it is to help men and men's health, prostate cancer, mental illness, that sort of thing for men. That's what Movember is all about. And you know what? The way I look at it is if what I raise can help one individual man, it's well worth it.
Absolutely. So with that, we've got a few more days left in this month, obviously. So folks, again, Rick Vive, go to the link and donate what you can. You may all be wondering what us two old buzzards are doing here on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock. Well, it's a little bit of a special occasion. Squid's driven in generously from Niagara Falls, so it took him almost 2.5 hours, a little over 2.5 hours to get here from Niagara Falls with the traffic. There's some out-of-town guests here. One of our friends who runs Hockey Time Machine, we've been guests on that show a number of times, and I've guest hosted a number of times, and Steve Paikin can't do it, and it's run by Paul Patskow and Glenn Dreyfus from Seattle. A lot of those guys are in town this weekend for the Hockey Expo at the International Center. We have a display there. I'll give you my shameless self-plug. I'll be at tables 1307 and 1309 all weekend selling my book. Squid was supposed to bring a few of his books, but he forgot when he came in. Not surprising, but we'll do what we can. We'll give it a promo anyway. His book is still available. So we thought we'd do tonight, in honor of the Hockey Expo, we would talk a little bit about collecting. So first off, but before we get to that, be remiss if I didn't talk about last night's 3-0 victory over Philadelphia. I only saw the first period because I was playing hockey myself. Justin Holl back in the lineup. Looked like he had a couple of shaky shifts right off the bat, but he seemed to steady himself as the game went along. But overall, what was your impression of his game and the Leafs generally?
I thought pretty good. I honestly thought their defense played pretty strong in their own zone, especially on the penalty kill. Philadelphia could not get their power play going whatsoever. Toronto did a fantastic job shutting down their power play. And I think that was the difference in the game was the special teams because they were unable to score on the power play. In fact, I don't even think the 2 or 3 power plays that I saw, they didn't even get a chance. So Toronto did a heck of a job on the penalty kill. And a lot of that had to do with Hall and Muzzin and Riley. And I mean, they played pretty good. I was impressed.
Well, they're going to have their hands full this weekend with Calgary on Friday night and Buffalo Saturday night, and they're going to have to split the goaltending between Joseph Woll and Jack Campbell at some point, it looks like, and probably this weekend is as good as any. So all things are shaping up for hopefully an eventful weekend, not only with the Maple Leafs, but with the memorabilia show at the International Center. So first and foremost, as I mentioned, it's a big weekend. I was out there today at the site. It is the biggest room I've seen since this expo has started. It's massive. I believe there's 350 dealers, which is a record level. There's lots of spacing because it's so large. There's a lot of room for people to move around. So we encourage people to come. There's lots of autographed guests, lots of things for people to see and do, and lots of great memorabilia, lots of books for sale, like mine. You want to come by and have a look at all of this, and I think you'll enjoy yourself. Now, before we go any further, Squid, as a kid, were you a collector?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I loved hockey cards. I collected hockey cards when I was a kid. I think I had 3 shoe boxes full of hockey cards. And I mean, probably ones that are today would be worth, a considerable amount of money. I think my mother by accident threw them all out one time, which,
of course,
didn't sit well with me as a teenager at that point. Knowing that those cards, one day would probably be valuable, but like Bobby Orr rookie cards and Bobby Hull, the John Bellevos, all those older players. I had all their cards, and unfortunately, and it was an accident. She accidentally threw them out. She thought it was garbage, and what it is, what it is, I guess.
Well, that seems to be the common theme for most kids growing up with hockey cards. But you just have to look at it this way: if everybody had kept those cards, they wouldn't have been worth that much because there'd have been lots of them around. So think about it that way.
Yeah,
So that's the maybe
I'll
saving grace.
try. I'll try, Mike.
Yeah. Well, but why couldn't you have been the guy who actually kept the cards and still have them today to be selling them with these crazy prices that's going on? So I think everybody that follows a little bit about what I do knows my background. So I'm not going to bore you guys with all the details of collecting. But once you have it in your gene, you never give it up. And, I was out there today, you could feel the blood rushing, and I was getting a little bit excited walking around and taking a look at some of the stuff. And it just brings back so many memories. And you're just looking at things you saw as a child growing up. And even as an adult, you see all the adults walk around. Everybody sort of had that same look. Let me ask you this, Squid. Do you remember your first autograph that you ever signed?
Yeah, I do. I was 12 years old. I signed a piece of paper. I was actually starting to practice my autograph when I was 12 years old because I said to myself, one day I'm going to need to write my autograph for people. So I was 12 years old. I was sitting at the kitchen table, had a piece of paper, and started practicing my autograph. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years. I think the first autograph I probably signed was in junior in Sherbrooke. Which would have been what, 1976, I believe.
Probably, yes.
My first year there, and that was probably the first actual autograph that I probably signed for an individual. But for many years before that, I was practicing my autograph to make sure that when it was time to do it, that it was done right.
Well, of course. So let me ask you this, and it is a family show, so we want to keep it clean. The strangest thing somebody had you sign over your career as a player?
Well, I've been asked to sign a few pretty crazy things, which I didn't do, but I'm trying to think. I mean, people have asked, I've signed a couple of people's arms or something, which I figured, well, why are you getting it on your arm? It's going to come off eventually anyway, but and then there was a few other intimate places that I was asked to sign,
Yeah.
which I didn't. So, yeah, probably like on a person's arm or leg or something. But like I said, I always ask them, well, why are you getting it here? Like, why don't you get it on a piece of paper? Because this is going to wash off eventually. But they wanted it there. So, okay.
So now talk about the change you saw when you first entered the league. And I know that there's a lot of charity donations made by each NHL club or every professional sports team that does this. And I know that the guys do a lot of signings. So was there a specific day or something in training camp where you guys would sign all sweaters, sticks? Like, just talk about the progression of that when you first started and to your last few years.
Yeah, I mean, I think every year I played, I think in training camp, there was one day set aside where after practice and maybe one on that day, we probably only practiced once instead of twice. And then in the afternoon, they'd have like, I don't know how many sticks and sweaters and everything all laid out. And sometimes they had like individual stuff for players to sign. And you would just go through and whatever was for you to sign, you'd sign it. And I think I did that every single year that I played. And I'm pretty sure that it hasn't stopped since then. I think it's continued every single year for pretty much all the NHL teams. And a lot of those things go to charity events and that sort of thing. We do the same thing with our alumni. We have our AGM every year in September, and we sign a whole bunch. I would say probably about 70 or 80 sweaters, all the players. And those are all given to charity things to make money for charities as well.
So what do you think it is that people are so enamored with an autograph? Have you ever really thought about, like, I've heard players say before, why does some guy want my signature on a stick or a bat or a glove or a ball or on a photo? Have you ever just thought about what it is that drives people to want these things?
Actually, no, I've never really thought about it.
Yeah.
Think of it. I mean, it's a good point, Mike. It's like, it is kind of, well, yeah, when you think about it that way, you go, well, why would you want that? But I guess, hey, it's your favorite player or it's a famous player. And it's just nice to have something with his name written on it that he actually did himself. And I think that's the biggest thing to look at, is that it's his signature. He put it there himself, and that, and you have it.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the whole idea behind it, is that you get that right from the player himself.
Well, I would say that, myself, I was never really big on the autographs. That just really wasn't that. But if anything, all it would do is, just to your point you just made, it would authenticate and almost give it real credibility with the signature on it, that I knew the player signed it, whatever the item was, whether it was a sweater or a stick or something along those lines. And it just gave me that satisfaction that it really was from that player. So, but it's funny. We'll watch this weekend and there'll be people lined up for half
Hmm.
an hour to get a signature, and the money has just gone through the roof. I mean, do you remember what was no, I don't want to put you on the spot because everybody gets paid now to do this, but I've heard stories. I think you told me a story one time where guys would stand out the front and they'd hold a binder open with about 50 cards and wanting to sign them all. And they're all being sold. And you sign one or something, or one or two, and
Well,
say,
that would be outside hotels when you're on the road,
yeah,
and there'd be like 8 or 10 guys out there, and they would have literally one of those things that you would put photographs in, I guess.
yeah.
And they would be loaded with cards, and they'd want you to sign the whole darn thing. And it was like, look, I don't have time to sign, and there's more people here. I'll sign 2 of them for you. Which 2 do you want me to sign? And then, of course, the next day they'd be back again, and then you'd sign 2 more. Eventually, over the course of a couple of years, they probably got them all signed. So,
Well, it's really funny because I met these kids through the collecting and the stuff I went through. I met these young kids one day and I got talking to them, and these guys were professional autograph seekers. So what they would do is they would be hired by the memorabilia stores to go and get autographs because they were kids. So baseball players in particular, especially guys that were staying at Skydome, they would know all the bars they were drinking at. So what they do is they'd go outside the bars, knowing they were coming out, the guys would be half in the bag, and they'd be throwing these balls at the guy's son, and they'd go and be selling them to the dealers, who then be turning around, marking them way up, and sell them to clients.
well, smart guys.
They were smart. They're professional autograph seekers. So anyway, folks, I mean, if you can this weekend, get out. I think you'll enjoy it. But I we just wanted to move along a little bit here. What we try to do, try to make this a bit of an open forum tonight with people to ask questions. We've got a whole pile of them have come into us. Here's one that just got thrown. There's no name on it, but for Rick, I'm just reading this for the first time, so I hope this one is very clean. Any lasting impressions of particular officials? Oh, this is going back to your hockey days. How the game was called back in the day versus today, I assume they mean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember. I mean, the thing, the referees back then obviously called the game differently. I mean, the game was played differently. It was called differently than it is today. But I had a really good relationship with all the referees and the linesmen. I always talked to them all the time, and we got along fine. We didn't always agree. We had a few yelling and screaming matches at one another, but nonetheless, at the end of the day, they were the ones that ruled the game, and they made the calls, and they weren't going to change their mind. So whatever you said to them wasn't going to change their mind anyway.
Next question is for me. What is your second favorite NHL team? Well, my second favorite team is Team Canada. The rest of them doesn't count. Okay. So I've been asked that question many times. And I remember I was on CBC TV doing a national interview one time, and they wanted to know what Canadian team I was cheering for once the Leafs were out. I said I couldn't care less. So the only team I'm cheering for is wearing red and white, and they start Thursday. And I think they were playing in Prague at the time of the World Championship. So sorry, folks, there isn't a second team. This one here is coming from an Andy. Andy suggests that many people may not know this, but I just learned you were on the same World Junior team as Wayne Gretzky, 1978. This is for you, Rick, obviously. Mm-hmm. Did you collect anything from those games?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately, I mean, I was 18 years old, and it was kind of, I don't know, you just don't think of that, and They didn't give us our sweaters or anything afterwards, or any of the stuff that we wore, and therefore, now the one thing that was great about that was um, we dressed in the Montreal Canadiens weight room. They took all the weights out and they put stalls in there. So we used their dressing room, basically, their showers and everything. So you're walking around the Montreal dressing room where all the plaques are all above all the seats and everything. It was pretty cool. It was an unbelievable experience, really, when you're an 18-year-old playing in the World Juniors. Now, we ended up winning the bronze, unfortunately, because the Russians, who had all those guys that came and played in the NHL eventually, that were all great players. And then the Swedes, same thing. A lot of those guys came and played in the NHL and were great players in the NHL as well. But we had a pretty good team, and playing with Wayne, I mean, he was 16 and most of us were 18, 19. Some guys were even 20. And here's this 16-year-old who leads the whole tournament in scoring and wins the MVP. I believe he won for the tournament. It was pretty good. It was, and we had a pretty good team. Bobby Smith, we had Mike Gartner, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, all these guys, everybody on our team, with the exception of Pat Daly, I believe, were all played in the NHL for at least 300 games.
You guys were loaded. And
Yeah.
that was now just maybe for the listeners who are unaware, that was the first World Juniors Championship where a country was represented by an all-star
Yep.
team.
Mm-hmm.
And you were the first. And you guys, your team was loaded. And I mean, it's almost, when you look at that lineup today, and it's almost astounding how you actually lost. So it just speaks to how good those other teams really were.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing, Wayne Gretzky, who led the tournament in scoring and everything, the funny thing about him being there, he wasn't at the summer camp. He wasn't invited.
That's right.
Because he didn't really know how he was going to do in the OHL as a 16-year-old. And Billy Derlago was the guy that was there. But Billy hurt his knee, I think about a week or 2 weeks before the camp, before the World Juniors, before our little training camp beforehand started. So they had to pick another centerman, and Gretzky was leading the OHL in scoring at the time. So they grabbed him, and lo and behold, wins the scoring in the World Juniors, and then the next year he's playing in the WHA, and then, well, the rest is history, I guess.
You really wonder, and Billy, by the way, for those paying attention, I believe he had 89 goals in 52 games that year. So
92
in 52 games.
Yeah.
So think about that, folks. And playing in that Western Hockey League was not playing like in the men's Markham Hockey League that I play in. Believe me, it was pretty rough. And those guys could play.
And
so
long bus rides. Long bus rides.
Yeah, and those long bus rides and the cold weather. And I'm telling you, some of the rides went on there. What other memories do you have from that Team Canada in '78?
No, I mean, just everything about it. It was, you're representing your country, which, anytime you represent your country, which I did 2 more times in the World Championships in Finland and Prague, it's always unbelievable to represent your country worldwide. And the guys that I played with, and then, years later playing against them in the National League and reminiscing about, that tournament back in Montreal, Quebec City, Hull. It was all over the whole Quebec area. And it was just an amazing thing to be able to get to do. And I feel very fortunate that I was there and I was able to play in that.
Well, here's that. Now we're going to move along here to a couple of new other questions we've got coming in here that I've written down a few. Can't put them all on, but we've got a few here. Rick, do you have a good yarn about your hockey card? I assume they mean your rookie card.
Do I have a what?
A good yarn about your hockey card.
Oh, the one that, well, yeah, I mean,
with the hair, maybe they're talking about.
Yeah, the everything was kind of airbrushed on because like they take the pictures in the New York area, Jersey, Rangers, Islanders in the fall, and then the cards don't come out until like late February, early March. Well, I had been traded in February from Vancouver to Toronto, and they probably had a headshot of me in Vancouver. And of course, they're not going to put that on the card. So they ended up kind of airbrushing a picture of me from the picture they probably had from the Canucks, and with a Leaf sweater and everything else. And Yeah, it was kind of weird. It was one of those cards. I don't think I've seen any other ones like it. And I think that was because I was one of the few guys that got traded before the cards actually came out. And you know what? It is what it is. And it's funny because on the bottom right corner is a little thing shaped like a puck, and it
That's
says
right.
right wing. But then there's a whole bunch of them I've seen that were all blacked out. And I asked someone, I said, I don't know what the heck that was all about. And apparently one was the American version and one was the Canadian version. And I didn't know that. And so anyway, but it's a unique rookie card that I haven't seen anybody else have. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Well, a collector's always looking for the unusual, and cards, misspellings, a backwards pitcher, an error like you suggested, a right winger being labeled as a left winger. A guy near and dear to you, Steve Bludzik. There's a question about him in here. Steve Bludzik and Steve Larmer, two guys are very close to you. One you think should be in the Hall of Fame, another guy's a very good buddy of yours. Both had their names reversed on their cards, and they became real collectibles back when they came out. And guys were going in the room and I remember being at shows and guys were going around trying to buy all those cards up they could because their names were misplaced under their pictures. So the question follows that while we're on that topic, what was it like spending time with Ludsey?
Oh, Ludsey was great. He was, we always had a lot of laughs and we drove in together a lot, and Larms, I got to play on the same line as him, but and Leslie, to this day, he's still got one of the better sense of humors in the game that I ever of any of the guys I ever played with, and even with everything that he's gone through and going through health wise, he still maintains a pretty good, attitude and still has a good humor. I mean, you go and visit him and. He's not grumpy. He's not upset. He's not, he's funny. He laughs about it and says, well, it is what it is. And, so just, they're two great guys that I got to play. Well, there's a lot of guys, every guy I played with.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But those two were kind of special, especially Ludsey, because he's one of the reasons I ended up moving to Niagara Falls, because I was down here doing a lot of stuff with him. Fundraising and that sort of thing for Parkinson's, and that kind of got me down in Niagara Falls quite a bit. My wife came down a few times, and then she said, "Why don't we move here?" And we were in Oakville at the time, and of course we sold high and bought low down in Niagara Falls. So it was good all the way around, Mike.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it, Squid. I'm telling you. Well. Let's see now, just for those also that are paying attention and anybody who may care, I'm hosting a little event tonight for some of the out of town guests that are coming into the show. And I said a lot of them are associated with the Hockey Time Machine, which I mentioned earlier. And Rick's driven in from Niagara Falls. I said took him a long time to get here tonight. And Ludsey would have joined his good friend Dan Lancione, who does a lot of work with his foundation. They do some wonderful work for Parkinson's in the Niagara region, running golf tournaments and dinners. And Ricky was a big participant in that. And I just noticed here one of your buddies, Razor One, says, Rick's the man. Hope you talk about the near hole-in-one last Saturday. Oh, you always love talking about golf. There you go.
Okay, so we got a foursome in front of us, and we're three. There's only 7 of us showed up to play that Saturday. A lot of times we have 16 guys, and they make teams of 2 and have played best ball, whatever. Anyway. We get to this 18th hole. It's a par 3 at our golf course. And I had already had one closest to the pin, which was worth $5, I think. And then there was skins and there was, other things.
Yeah.
And we were playing a game where you collect points, birdie, eagle, par, whatever.
Stable.
Anyway, we get to the 18th green and I see a ball that looks like it's pretty close to the hole. And the 4 guys are standing right by the green and they're going like this. Come on, you guys hit. Okay. So I said, okay, guys, I got to get myself a closest to the pin and a skin here. So hit the ball, hit a little cut in there, hit about 15 feet before the hole, rolled up. I guess I couldn't see it from back on the tee, caught the hole and went around the hole and ended up about 5.5 inches behind the hole. And, those guys up by the green, they were jumping up and down, hoping it went in, because then I would have had to buy all their beer.
Yeah. And you don't drink anymore, so that would have been a very expensive pop for beer.
But I got my skin and I got my closest to the pin on that hole, so I ended up even for the day.
Well, listen, what more can you ask for along those lines? We've got time here for a couple more questions, folks. But here's another one. I like it. You can answer the first part of this, but the second part I think we'll leave alone. But name the teammate you love the most, and the teammate you hated the most. So we'll leave the second part out, because I think we've talked about many times on the show. Every hockey player that's come on the show, sure, you don't get along with everybody all the time, but at the end of the day, it's left at the rink. And as you and I think a dozen guys have said on our 71 podcast, there's maybe a handful of guys that you really don't like from all your years playing hockey. And you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I could count on one hand how many guys I wouldn't never say hate, because hate's a pretty strong word. And there wasn't a guy that I hated. There were just guys that I didn't kind of gel with or didn't see things the same way as. But, Mike, I played with so many great guys. I can't even really start. Billy D, for starters, who was the best man at my wedding.
Yep.
40 years ago, almost 41 years ago, was a great friend and a funny guy. I mean, when you think about when John Brophy's our coach and he's a hard ass, and Billy's coming back from an injury, and he says, "Billy, get over in the weight room and ride the bike." Billy goes over there, and Billy's pedaling away, and he's got a coffee in one hand and a cigarette in the other. And Brof walks in and starts screaming at him, and then he says, "If you're not going to try, you may as well go home." And Billy got off the bike, said, "Okay, see you tomorrow," and walked out. So, I mean, I played with so many really unbelievable guys in my career that were all great people and great guys. And I'm very thankful for that. And, I don't like to single guys out, because I played with so many great, funny guys, great guys that were just unbelievable throughout my entire career.
Well, the next one here goes to you. Well, maybe I'll steal this next one. Of all your collectible memorabilia, Mike, what item or piece is the most favorite, and why? Well, I got to ask this.
Probably my World Junior sweater.
Your World Junior sweater was a good one, because I got a couple good stories from Gretzky in that one too. Gretzky thought it was his when he only saw the front, and then he told us a great story about a lithograph above that. But yeah, I had a couple pieces of yours that are actually that I do like. But I get asked this all the time, and the thing I try to explain to people is this, because I of the thousands of pieces that I had, I try to tell people that, look, and they don't believe me, I know, when I say a slat of coin or a marble or a coloring book, that means as much to me as a game worn sweater from Max Bentley from 1951, or a Rick Vive game worn sweater, or George Armstrong game worn sweater. Because the thing about it is, what those memories bring to you, and this is where the collectible world, I think, has lost its bearings and lost its footings, because you got to take it like you were a kid growing up, and we all pretended we were somebody on the driveway scoring and winning, going to Stanley Cup or something. But I would remember that my mom would go shopping Saturdays and come home with the Slata, the Jello, the check with the pictures in the front. I would go and try and pick out the player, and the Maple Leafs would all be gone, and there'll be those lousy Montreal Canadiens left. That's where it all started. And that's the memories you have as a kid. Brings you back to your childhood, brings you that connection with your mother, your father, with your friends, being on the street talking that. If you don't have that background and that footprint and that blueprint, the collecting the Max Bentley sweater means nothing, because that's where it really starts. And that's where, when you try to explain to people, that's the core of what it really means. So I know I'm skipping around the question. So it all means everything to me. Every piece that I look at, and I'm looking around my small room I have now compared to what I used to have, every piece in here means something, and it has a meaning to it. And if it doesn't have some special meaning, then why do you have it? You wouldn't buy a car without knowing about the car. You wouldn't buy a suit without knowing about the suit. So why would you have a piece that has no meaning to you? Okay. If you get that, there you go.
I got a question for you on that front.
Absolutely.
When the first time I went to your place, and I went to the washroom in your basement, and lo and behold, I walk up to the door, and it's the door to our dressing room at the Gardens.
How about that?
So
Well, I got
when you're talking about all those little things, that means just as much as any of the other articles that you probably had.
Well, absolutely. And here's the thing. When I was a kid, I used to stand outside that door waiting for the guys to come out, and that door would slam open. I told this story last week on the Hockey Time Machine, and the door would slam open, and Johnny'd walk out, and I'd be looking up at those guys coming out, and I stared at that door, waiting for it to open. The few games I'd go to with my dad. Little did I know, 50 years later, that door would be in my dressing room, or
Yeah,
that be in my basement, that dressing room door. And players standing outside that door looking at it with tears in their eyes, bringing back the memories of them going through it. And then
yeah.
you start imagining who went through that door over the years: the Beatles, Elvis Presley, presidents, prime ministers, you name it, Tiny Tim, like pick a name.
Harold
Anybody
Ballard.
Harold Ballard walking you guys out of the room while he's in there getting a massage or getting his feet rubbed down. You guys can't get in and get taped for practice. Like this type of stuff. These are the stories that all go with that.
Yeah.
So that's the part that really means something to me, and that's where it all really sort of fits.
Now,
So
if you knew all the things that went on beyond that door,
well, that's another story on this. That's another story on itself. So we'll save that one for another day. Okay. But here's our last question we'll get to before we let you guys all go. But Rick, this one's for you. What did the game of hockey teach you about life from the minors to, well, you didn't play in the minors, from playing against OHL, World Juniors, to the pros?
You know what? I think, I mean, it teaches you, I'm not even really sure how to word it. It's kind of, I mean, it's life lessons, because the game is the same as life itself. I mean, in order to excel, you have to do exceptional things. You got to work exceptionally hard. You got to do things sometimes you don't want to do. I mean, I remember as a kid in Bantam or midget, or even whatever, having a practice at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you had to go home, and then you had to go to school, and I hated that. But in order to get to where you wanted to go, you had to do those things.
Yep.
And in life is no different. There's things in life that when you're young, or when you're a student in college or something, maybe you don't want to go to a class one day, you're at a party the night before, or whatever the case might be, but you got to go because you got to learn, and you got to get that degree so that you can go on and get a good job afterwards. So it's no different than life. Being a pro athlete and how to get there is the same way of being successful in life. No difference whatsoever.
Well, would it be fair to say that as a hockey player, even an elite athlete, or even an elite student, somebody who grows up at the top of their class, where everybody is kissing their butt, kissing the parents' butt, just to have them on their team, they're playing double shifts, they're playing power play, penalty kill, they're building teams around them. And all of a sudden you arrive at your first training camp, and you walk in the room and you go, where's my number 9? Am I wearing the C? Who's playing on the wings with me in the first line? And they go, well, I got news for you there, kid. See those 4 guys over there? They all scored 65 goals last year in junior, same as you did. And this guy here, who's been with the team 4 years, scored 75, and he scored 80 over here. Get in line. To me, the lesson learned there is that you have to mentally prepare and adjust your whole thinking and be tough enough. And you got to grow up pretty quick as an 18 or 19-year-old, or even a 20-year-old, to adjust to that. And to me, I think that may be what makes athletes a breed above maybe that guy who just works something special for a living or something else for a living. I may a little bit offside on that, but you know where I'm going with that, where they have to grow up and be mentally tough much quicker.
Yeah, you know what? And Mike, too, like, I don't know. I think the guys that do get to the very top and become, some of the best players, they don't have expectations that those things are going to be given to them. Like when I went to junior, I thought, okay, I got to earn everything. I'm here. I fortunately got the number I wanted, 22 in junior, but everything else I had to work for. Nothing was given to me. And then same thing in the WHA. I did get the number I wanted. Vancouver, I didn't. Toronto, I did. Chicago, I did not. And Buffalo, I didn't until Lindy got traded, rough, and I ended up taking his 22. But nothing is given to you. And that's the thing, I think, going into it. If you have the expectations that because you're a star all the way up, that everything is going to be given to you, well, guess what? That's not the way it works. You got to earn every damn thing you get at every level that you move up. And by the way, I did play in the minors. At the end of my career in Buffalo,
I didn't count that.
Well, I count it. We almost won the Calder Cup. I mean, it would have been kind of cool. And then the next year, signed with Vancouver as a player assistant in Hamilton with their minor league team, the Hamilton Canucks, in the AHL.
You were playing coach, though, I thought, weren't you?
I was a player assistant coach.
Yeah.
And broke my wrist the first day of camp, missed 14 weeks. And anyway, it wasn't a great season.
And by the way, you weren't number 22 when you first came to the Leafs. What number were you? Your
12.
First game?
12. Wore 12 for, I don't know, I think 3 games.
And then you were 28 for a bit?
No, that was in Vancouver.
In Toronto, you were 28 for Toronto. You wore it for a game in Toronto, too. Remember I sent you that picture? We'll have to bring that one back.
Oh, sorry. No, hold on. I wore number 20 in Toronto.
20.
Well, 12 is what I wore in Buffalo before I got 22. Yeah. But I don't remember wearing 28 in Toronto.
Oh, that was 20. No, it's 20. It's 20.
It was number 20. Yeah. Sorry. You're right. And Vancouver, I wore 28. And then, like I say, when I first came to Buffalo, I wore 12. And then Lindy got traded to the Rangers, and I ended up with his 22.
Well, I was going to say, by the way, folks, just for like we were walking back to we've done this in the special room. We walk out, and Squid made a comment to me about the shoes he was wearing tonight, and we should throw something out from Deb and I want to congratulate you on you're being inducted into Quebec Hockey Hall of Fame, I believe, for the juniors and for your years in Sherbrooke. Now it was postponed because of COVID, so congratulations on that, and hopefully that comes up in the next year.
Yeah, I hope they do it this year, like in April or something. It was supposed to be April of 2020. And then, of course, everything got thrown out the window. And I had gone and bought a new suit, and it was all prepared. And I got these nice new black shoes, brown shoes to go with what I was going to wear, because we were going to be in near Montreal for about 3 or 4 days, my wife and I. And I remember about a month ago, I wore these shoes for the first time in like almost 2 years. So it was kind of.
Well, we feel honored, Squid, you're wearing them here today.
Yeah.
So, folks, we want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. We're going to go back and talk to our friends for a little bit about, if you can, again, drop into the Hockey Expo this weekend at the International Center, 1307 and 1309. I've said it 3 times now. Please let that sink in and come and see me. And I promise you, we'll tell you a funny story of some sort. You may even just laugh at me. But the other thing I want to remind you guys, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, our weekly podcast drops. Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan, Bernie Nichols, great stories. As I mentioned yesterday on the show, tune in and listen now. He got Squid with a prank at the 1985 World Championships. It scared the bejesus out of him, and he still talks about it to this day, and talks about how he got some very tough guys, including Scott Stevens, almost to tears with some of the things he got these guys on. So I won't say anymore. Tune in tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, Squid and the Ultimate Leaf Fan. Guys, we'll be back to you next week with another show Wednesday talking about the Leafs. In the meantime, everybody enjoy themselves, and hope we'll see you this weekend.